All right. Well,
What's going on, man?
it has been a busy week.
Yeah?
We finally decided to go ahead with remodeling part of the house and the bathroom and everything. So that's been
Fun
an
project.
adventure.
Yeah.
Figuring out all the parts, moving parts there. So that is scheduled to start tomorrow.
Are you just remodeling or are you making it a little bigger too?
We're just remodeling. There's no real plan to make it bigger, but we will get more room with the way we're doing it.
Yeah.
A little bit in the shower, but yeah, it's just it's always an adventure. I think about it, and I wonder what it really adds to the value of the house, but it's definitely going to add a lot of value to the quality of life.
Right on. Well, my week has been starting a new diet, trying to get a little slimmer. I hate dieting because I like food, but
What is the diet? Is it a particular type of diet?
Just trying to keep low calories. So under 2,500 is for me to lose weight. And then I've been going to the driving range every morning and then walking every night. But I'm lazy. I don't like doing it.
Dude, I got you, man. I started walking about a year ago, and I don't keep. Like this week, I haven't walked at all because kids' school started. So now I got to get up at 7 in the morning to get ready and get out the door by 7:30.
Yeah.
So it kind of messed up the schedule for that. So maybe next week I'll get back into it a little bit and be able to do it after I take them to school. But just that switch in scheduling kind of messed up the rhythm.
But, well, I just kind of got tired of staring at myself on camera, so I need to get svelte for the audience.
Dude, I feel you. I mean, I'm not as big as you are, but I feel it, so I understand.
I need to be looking good for our audience. So.
Yeah, you're always looking good for me.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'm Scott Hess, tax and business consultant.
I'm John Barton, small business owner. Remember the tortoise and the hare? Slow and steady wins the race.
We started Turtlesmith to help people start small businesses, providing information and resources to small business owners and entrepreneurs.
Build a solid foundation and forge your dreams.
Well, this week's main topic is the final step in phase 1. We did it. We have built our business plan. This last part is pretty simple. It's just putting it all together. So going back through every step and then combining it into an actual business plan. And so you should have a handful of documents that you need. Really, I just suggest putting everything in kind of a big binder. That way you just have it all, everything you've done, all your notes and printouts and paperwork. Just get one of those big 3-ring binders for cheap at Office Depot. But there's a few specific documents you might need. The first one we're going to talk about, and Calvin, I sent you that link, I think, in email. Otherwise, we can just Google it. It is the SBA business plan. And so we'll take a look at this website and we'll have it linked. It's just how to write your business plan. You don't have to do this, but it's a good template if you want something to look kind of professional like a business plan. And it is required if you want to submit like a business plan to the SBA for a loan request or funding. And so on this one, pick a business plan format that works for you. If you click that one right in the middle. And then there's 2 types. There's the lean startup plan and the traditional business plan. The lean startup plan is really just for you, your own kind of use. So we'll have that up, but we're going to take a look at the traditional business plan. So you can just click on that. There should be some examples actually if you go down a little bit further. There you go. Download Rebecca's traditional business plan. All right, so we very easily uploaded this one from the website. No issues whatsoever. So this is Rebecca's example, and it's right there on the SBA.gov website. And they name it We Can Do It Consulting. But if you scroll down, the first page is your executive summary. And this is basically your elevator pitch and your kind of general company overview. So you have what your product is, and then you kind of want to add in your elevator pitch in there, who you are, everything about it. The customers are going to be everything that we've gotten from our market research phase and the feasibility study when we kind of targeted our ideal customer. And then the future of a company is just, a little bit of a word you hate, fluff, about, what you're going to do. You don't even have to include that part, but that's basically that first part. And then scroll down. Company description. This is going to be your mission statement, which again we came up with previously in the steps, and then the principal members and legal structure. You probably had thought about a little bit about that throughout the feasibility study and a couple other steps. We talk a little bit more about business structuring later. We always recommend an LLC at the bare minimum. There are some other options, but LLC is usually best for a small business.
So let me just stop you right there and ask something. So at this point, when you're creating your business plan, do you at this point need to actually be incorporated or have a business?
You do not need to have anything yet. No, you don't need to actually go out and get your LLC just yet.
Would you say at that moment, my company, ABC company, will be structured as an LLC or something, so that you're showing the people you're trying to get a loan from that you know what the proper entity is?
Yeah. And we learn a little bit more in the next phase during the preparation phase. And that's when you can actually go out and get your LLC. I have seen far too often people will come in and they've already created like 2 LLCs and they need it for this and that. And then they never end up getting used. And you have to pay $100 and then they forget to dissolve it when they don't use it. And it just causes a headache for everybody. So I would not suggest getting your LLC until you're actually ready to ask for funding or open a bank account or whatever else you need to do. The next portion is the market research of this business plan. And again, we've already done all this. All of this work has already been completed in our previous market research step. You just want to kind of follow this guideline to go through and talk about what your industry is, your more detailed description of who your ideal customer is, and then that competitive advantage. This is where you want to highlight that competitive advantage again, which we've discussed before.
I just want to point out, though, that if this business plan came across my desk, I'd have to reject it, and I'll tell you why. Nobody in consulting says we can do it. They all say you can do it.
Yeah, there you go. The final portion of their deal is the regulations, which again we've already gone through in the become an expert phase, and in your feasibility study you know all the regulations and different licenses and permits that you'll need. And then this is where we kind of add in a little bit more information, but again, we've already done all of this. Our product and services, we're just going to outline exactly what it is we're offering, and you can even add in your pricing structure, which, as I've said several times, we've already done. You may have to include a little bit more if you want about your intellectual property, if that applies to your business or to the research and development. Again, those are just kind of future deals. We go over more of that in the next phase, but this is pretty straightforward. And then the next portion of it is the marketing and sales, your growth strategy, your sales pitch, how you're going to sell, all included in a business plan. And what they don't include on this particular one is they don't include the financials. So you want to add those financial documents from the previous step into this, and then you have a comprehensive SBA business plan ready to go.
Okay.
And all this work, again, has kind of already been done for you. You can follow this template to make sure you have a good SBA loan. And again, if you're not applying for the SBA, you don't have to do this step, but it is a good kind of extra exercise.
So is this something that you would want to prepare for just about any source of funding that you're seeking, that you're requesting?
No. So this is specifically for the SBA and for you. It also works for some potential investors, but there is another document that we're going to talk about, and that is the pitch deck. The pitch deck is usually done either in PowerPoint or kind of like a Word document, but it has a lot more, again, that word you hate, fluff. A lot of pictures, a lot of buzzwords and good statements. We will have another example up there, but it's basically that business plan just to the bullet points. So in the market and research, in the SBA business plan, you're going to have a paragraph that you write. In your pitch deck, you just want to have some bullet points. And we'll have a good example of that up there. But you just want to have the bullet points because a pitch deck is actually to help you walk through your business plan in a presentation. And that's how you're going to meet investors. You're typically going to hook them with your elevator pitch and knowing your numbers, and then they'll schedule a meeting with you where you can deliver the pitch deck and walk them through it.
So if I were to um, characterize this, then I would say the business plan is something like, okay, our customers are, small businesses, medium-sized businesses, departments, for example, things like that. But if I were doing the pitch deck part of it, where I was going to identify the customers, I would be like, um, within 30 miles of me, there are 150,000 businesses.
Yeah,
that
those are
sort of
good
thing.
examples to add in. Those kind of analytics that you got during your market research of, what is the income levels of people around you and, in your geographic area. So,
So, okay, just basically those bullet point highlights and
mhm.
okay, got it.
Yeah. And then the last portion of sort of this put it all together phase is a funding request. You should, again, already have that done. It's your startup costs from the first one, including all of your working capital and your personal budget's working capital. We actually talk a little bit more about how to present that in the first phase or the first step of phase 2 when we talk about going out and trying to get funding.
And that will be, I assume there that we will be talking about the difference between investments as a part of your business versus loans, and what kind of terms and things like that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Where and when you can negotiate.
In that preparation phase, we're going to really talk a lot more about actually getting prepared for your business. And one of the steps is the funding. We talk about the different types of investors. So there's usually, early onset, angel investors, institutional investors, and then the difference between having an investor and taking a loan. And we have the kind of weigh the pros and cons of those various ones as well. So, but that's kind of it for this segment. Honestly, it's just about taking everything that you have and kind of combining it into a readable format so that somebody else can see it. I would assume that if you've gone through all of these steps, you probably have a large collection of Post-it notes and yellow legal pads where you've written stuff down, printouts from different websites where you've researched and stuff. So it's all about just getting it into a comprehensive format so that you can have it for yourself or show it to other people and get comments on.
This episode is sponsored by JB Cases. JB Cases is a pool cue case company specializing in custom cases. They have been in business since 2007, and their motto is true protection, true durability, true comfort, and true custom. Visit them at jbcases.com.
All right, our next segment is going to be all about covering your ass. So in business, you have to cover your ass from getting sued, from liabilities. And so specifically, we're going to talk about disclosures, business language, and a little bit about trademarks. I think in later episodes, we'll probably get a little bit further onto these different topics. But you were telling me a story before we started about an artist who was claiming you had stolen some of their artwork, right?
Right. So this is literally the first time in 15 years, that we've received a letter from an artist saying that their art was used on a case that we built, and specifically it was claimed that we stole the art. But the way that we operate is that consumers can design their own case on our website. They can upload any graphic they want. But we make them sign a disclaimer that says that by uploading to our servers, they are attesting that they have the right to use that art. So it's not our job to go and find out whether they do or they don't. They're saying, I'm giving you this art to use in this way for my personal case, not for resale.
Is that just a disclaimer that you have on your website, or is it during the ordering process?
It's during the design process.
Process.
They have to read through that and agree to it every single time they upload anything to our website. So in any sort of image that they upload, they have to agree to that.
Gotcha. Do you have them do it for each individual thing they upload, or is it just a one-time
image?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So how does that work when somebody uploads it? Somebody uploads an image. You don't have to do any kind of verification. You have this disclaimer there, and then you're able to use that image for that particular customer only.
Right, and we don't ever take any of those images that customers have uploaded and use them on other people's cases, and we don't offer them to anyone else, because we are under the assumption, because the customer has told us that they have the right to use it, we're under the assumption that we don't have the right to use it for general sale, because we haven't acquired those rights. We don't own the image. It's not our image.
Mm-hmm.
So as far as we're concerned, it's either the customer's image or someone else's image,
Right.
but the customer is the one that's responsible for figuring that out.
Yeah.
Um,
Well,
and-
you had a, oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. And I was going to say, we specifically also tell, for example, dealers
Mm-hmm.
that are purchasing cases from us for resale. We have had dealers that come to us and say, hey, can you make a case with an NFL logo or basketball or whatever, any kind of logo on it? And we're like, no, because you're going to resell it. So that would be a violation of a trademark, for example.
Mm-hmm.
But a customer who comes to us and they upload an image, even if it's an NFL image or something like that, and then they're warranting that they have the right to use it, and it's for their personal use. So it's not for resale,
Yeah.
and that is allowed under fair use.
Gotcha.
But so basically, because of that disclaimer, I just shared that with the artist, and I told her, I said, this is really between you and the customer who uploaded it.
Mm-hmm.
And I talked, I did tell the artist, I said, there is a path, to have your art on our website, where anytime someone chooses it, then you'll get whatever amount of money that you say you want for it. We'll make sure that gets passed on to you, because all we care about is selling a pool cue case.
Yeah, you don't care
You know,
about the extra art.
I
on
don't
that.
care about the decoration on it, outside of things that I won't do morally, like I won't do hate speech, I won't do hateful symbols, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
But outside of that, I want people to be able to express themselves and their character, however they want to.
Mm-hmm.
And the most important thing for me is just selling them the underlying case. So essentially, we are providing a kind of a service like a Kinko's, if you will,
Yeah.
or a FedEx office, or
Just making
a
copies.
coffee shop.
Yeah.
And therefore, it's not really a violation for individual customers, but we have to have that disclaimer there to make sure that the customers are confronted with that barrier, before they upload any art.
That particular disclaimer, did you find that somewhere, or did you use it? You saw it at somebody else's
So
using it, or did you have a
I've
lawyer write
seen-
it? Or
Yeah, I've seen versions of it
Mhm.
at other sites that do similar type of work as us, where they allow a product to be decorated.
Mhm.
So I did look at the legalese on there, but I also rewrote it a little bit to fit us.
Yeah.
And
Well, I have a disclaimer like at the bottom of my email, that everybody should have, and we'll have another copy of that. But it's like, Tiffany had wrote it up. She's the attorney that works for me. She wrote it up and basically says like, don't this is all private communication. It's not for publishing or any like that stuff. But she just found that online, and then we just copy and pasted it. So
yeah, I mean, I think there's a lot of good stuff out there. Like parts of my warranty for our lifetime warranty and things
Mhm.
like that, I've taken from other places, public domain places where they say these are examples of the type of language you could use.
yeah,
I would say this, though. I would say that it's probably important to go ahead and pay for a little bit of an attorney's time to have them review whatever it is that you put up, because the difference between plain speaking and legal terms can often be vast.
it's not oftentimes, it is vast.
Yeah.
Absolutely, all the time. There's an entire class in college which is just legal writing. Learning how to put a lot of therefores and such ases and that kind of nonsense.
Right. So if you feel like that your attorney is good enough and giving you good advice, then that would be the way to go. But as we talked about earlier with the Disney issue,
Oh yeah, you were telling me
There's
about
a-
this situation with Disney, right?
Yeah,
Some
yeah.
lady passed away from a allergic reaction, and
Yeah.
then her husband's having trouble suing Disney, right?
Right. So the way I understand it is that that a guest at a Disney park had an allergic reaction and died. The husband wants to sue Disney about it. I don't know what his actual claim is. Maybe they weren't notified that the nuts were in the salad or something. I don't know the full details on that. So I don't know how strong his claim would be. I'm not a lawyer, and I don't know how strong his claim would be in any direction there.
Right.
But the interesting part of the news story that I was alerted to is that the husband has had a Disney Plus account, so the streaming service, right? And in the terms and conditions of the streaming service that you agree to in order to be able to sign up,
Mm-hmm.
there's apparently some clauses in there that basically say you cannot sue. You agree that you cannot sue Disney or any of its affiliated, companies. If there's any dispute, it has to go to arbitration. And
So because he clicked through one of those thousands of things that I always click through
That
on
nobody
streaming
reads.
service that I've never read once,
Mhm.
he's screwed basically over by Disney in this situation.
Yeah, so basically, don't be surprised if Mickey Mouse shows up to take away your firstborn because you probably signed it away in one of those terms and services.
I feel like that's a South Park episode right there.
Yeah,
It's just where
it's not. They
away
probably will make one.
Right, the terms and services. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, can you imagine that? Right?
No, I cannot imagine.
So you imagine now today, right? How when you look at a company like Disney, for example, right? So they operate in a virtual realm
Mm-hmm.
with all of the brands that they own. So Marvel and ESPN and all these broadcast things that they can do, right? That are entertainment based.
Yeah.
And then they have the physical entertainment, right, with their parks and things like that. But now they're basically saying that anytime you touch Disney and you sign a terms and services, whether it's not physical, it's just you're consuming their virtual content. Now you're not allowed to have any problem at their parks in their physical parks. So if the spire from their Magic Castle falls on you, right, it's arbitration and not a lawsuit.
Yeah. Well, in a lot of the contracts that we do, we include an arbitration clause because it typically is good for the business owner to have the arbitration. So I can see why they're arguing for it. It's usually better than going through the whole drawn-out lawsuit. But that is what a terrible
But
place
what a way
to be
for them
using
to
it.
cover their ass, right?
Yeah.
Because,
Yeah, we were just commenting, and I don't mean to make light because this is absolutely a tragedy, but some lawyer got paid a lot of money for pulling that out of his ass.
well, that's what we were explaining, right? Is the difference between $100 an hour lawyer and
Yeah.
$1,000 an hour lawyer. So,
Yeah.
your $100 an hour lawyer might say to you that something that you wrote, will pass muster, from a legal side.
Yeah.
But it might not, but at least you got some advice. But my advice would be, don't rely on only whatever you wrote up yourself, because the difference between what you wrote and how a lawyer might need to write it and how a court will need to read it
Vastly different.
can be vast.
Yeah. We do suggest that if you're going to have some type of business that sells large items, or especially service businesses, you're going to need some kind of contract. If you're a retail store, you obviously don't need a contract for people to come in and buy stuff off you. But if you're delivering goods, particularly if they're on, a 30-day net or a 60-day net, you don't get paid for later, you do need to have some type of paperwork. And really the only way to have good paperwork is to get a lawyer. Don't, in our opinion, don't buy things on some of those sites unless you're really confident in them. Have a lawyer draft something for you. They've already got 100 documents, at their office. They'll just retool them and sell them to you.
I got kind of a good CYA story.
Mm-hmm.
So way back in the day when I started my first company, in-stroke cases, we did a lot of custom stuff and everything. And I started to look around for a company that could help us move into mass production.
Mm-hmm.
So a person that we had sort of brought into our business. He found he himself was a Czech a citizen of the Czech Republic, or he was actually an immigrant into Germany. So I don't know if he was a German citizen at the point that he came into my business.
Mm-hmm.
But regardless, he had found a company, a factory that had a 100-year history of leather work. They made seats for Mercedes, they made gloves, briefcases. I mean, beautiful stuff, right? They had a literal like prototype shop that was as large as a football field. On like the 4th floor of a factory building. That's how big they were.
Yeah. As a maker, that has to be a little bit of a dream to see something like that, huh?
Oh, trust me, it was like every buckle and snap and part for any kind of bag that you could imagine was up there. Like it was truly a dream for me.
Yeah.
And it still is a dream that I want to achieve something like that. But as it turned out, we ended up actually doing business with this company and letting them do mass production for us. And we had a falling out with the partner who had introduced us to the company. Well, unbeknownst to me, the partner had created a contract between himself and our company. So my job was really just making cases. That was my part of the company. I didn't care too much about the paperwork, and at that point, we had a good partner who already had a very good business of his own. So I really trusted him on the paperwork. And this is not about a breach of trust. It's just normal contract law. But unbeknownst to me, we had somehow had some sort of a contract where the person who found the factory would get a percentage of the business that we did,
Mm-hmm.
some kind of finder's fee or something like that.
Yeah.
And so when he resigned his position in the company, his partnership, right? I thought, okay, it's all done. Well, he actually sued us for he sued for the amount of money that he thought he was owed for the fulfillment or for the getting into business with this company.
For the introduction.
For the introduction, yeah, or something along those lines.
Yeah.
And when I first heard about it, I was like, what do you mean he's suing us? What? We don't owe him anything, right? We dissolved our partnership. We paid out, what we owed.
Mm-hmm.
And, well, come to find out, we actually had a contract with a clause in it that said, if he finds this company and we do business with him, then we owe him some more money. So we had to pay it.
Yeah.
But that was an introduction to me of how strong a contract can be if you've got the terms in there that you want and it's legally correct and binding, and you take it all the way through to court.
Was your signature on that contract, or was that your partner?
My signature was not on it.
Okay.
But
So you don't get blamed for not reading it.
Right. The partners that did, they signed it. It was no problem. So it's nothing where I want to say that my other partners screwed over the company with that, like they made a mistake and just had a bad clause.
Mm-hmm.
Everything was in good faith. I just didn't know about it. That's all.
Yeah.
And so it was a surprise to me.
Gotcha.
And at the end of the day, I didn't mind paying it out. I was just a little upset because the way the guy exited the company, wasn't on the best of terms. So it was just another little kind of jab.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, it wasn't that much money that it ended up costing us. And we went on to make a lot more money. So, the introduction paid off.
Yeah.
But it was the first time that I had really been confronted with a type of breach of contract type of suit.
Mm-hmm.
When I make a contract, I'm usually really generous and fair, probably overly so. But it's just that was one where the guy's name was Netza. That's one where Netza just, he had the forethought to put that in the contract and cover his ass.
Yeah. That's a great example. Yeah, those kind of little things you really have to cover yourself for. The last kind of topic on that is the trademarks, which you have a lot more knowledge than I do on. But I always get a kick out of when you're discussing it about things like, what was it, that Velcro video where they were trying to say, stop using that name, or trampoline I didn't know was a brand that now it's synonymous, or Google. Now I think it's in the dictionary now. and you lose trademark if you're.
Well, I don't think that Google lost the trademark rights because it's in the dictionary.
Mm-hmm.
Because Google can't really do anything about it. I mean, maybe they could. I don't know. Excuse me. That would be an interesting thing to look up and see if if Google has any legal issues going on with the like main dictionaries.
Yeah.
But Chandler did the research earlier today on some of this. Like I was a trampolinist when I was in high school and college. And I never knew that trampoline itself was actually a trademark name. I thought it was just the name of the equipment.
Yeah.
So it's just like things like Xerox, the copy machine people, where people used to say, I'm going to Xerox that, and Xerox used to fight against that and say, no, you're going to copy it using a Xerox.
Yeah.
And Google, of course, doesn't ever put out any ads or anything saying, Google that. Although I think they would love to, because they must be on some level really delighted that the term Google has become synonymous with the name search, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've used it a bunch of times in these podcasts when we were talking about it. Google things.
I have heard people say things like, Google that, but use Bing because they're better.
Oh,
and I believe those are in the minority of people who say things like that.
Yeah,
But like when we were kids, we used to say things like get me a Coke and make it a Dr. Pepper.
Yeah.
But Chandler said that the industry term for that is called genericide. So if you let your trademark get to a point where it becomes a generic word,
mm-hmm.
then you basically run the risk of losing your trademark rights to it, because if it's so widely used, then it makes no sense to have it as a protected class.
Now, a small business who's just kind of starting out, they don't really need to run out and trademark their company right away. Isn't that right? Because they have like a fair use for a little while.
Okay, so that's a good one to explain.
Yeah.
So a trademark, or even a copyright, so I should explain real quick what the difference is between the two, right? A trademark is basically the mark of your company.
Mm-hmm. Which is the name, logo, color scheme, all that stuff.
Like for us, for example, Turtlesmith is the name of our company. That's our trademark.
Mm-hmm. So
if people think of Turtlesmith and they think of the products and services that we offer, the quality level that they get with us, anytime someone sees that Turtlesmith brand, it would be associated with that quality level.
Mm-hmm.
So trademarks, and this is counterintuitive, but trademarks are really there for the protection of the consumer. So that the consumer can reasonably expect a certain level of quality and reputation that is associated with the brand.
Right.
So therefore,
they're not tricked into buying something.
Exactly. So therefore, if people are using the same trademark or a similar sounding mark, then that leads to what's called dissolution.
Mm-hmm.
And it basically weakens the strength of the mark in people's minds,
mm-hmm.
especially when those marks are used with a lot lower quality goods or services. So that's why trademark owners should be diligent and spend so much time protecting their trademarks against that, to make sure that there's no confusion on the customer's part as to what the actual origin of the item is that is bearing the trademark.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you can liken it to just having a good name and a good reputation.
Mm-hmm.
And we all know that it takes a while to build a good reputation and good relationships with people, and that good reputation and that relationship can be destroyed in a matter of minutes, with certain actions.
Right.
So that's why it's so important for the trademark owner to be very protective of how their trademark is used, who's using it, and a lot of guys, especially small businesses, they don't start out with that.
Mm-hmm.
We had one instance with my first company that was titled In Stroke, right? So mm-hmm. the actual word, though, in stroke, as applies to pool, did not exist as a compound word. So we would say often, if you're playing good pool, we would say, man, you're playing really good. You're in stroke, right? Mm-hmm. So, a stroke in pool is this. And so if you're wonky with it, right, then you're going to have less success. But if you're really dialed in and everything is subconscious, then the slang term we use is that you're in stroke. So I combined those two words and made up a company called In Stroke, right? So now this is something that's never been used before. Now, fun fact, come to find out later, see, I created this company before the internet existed, or before public access to the internet existed. This was back like in 92, 91, right? And actually the very first iteration of In Stroke was actually two words. So when I created the brand, I used it just like people use it in normal conversation. And then I decided to just combine it and make one word, because people understood it when they heard it. And then I even had a little catchy line on there. I was like, so you always know that at least something about your game is in stroke, buy a case.
Yeah.
Sorry, I had to throw my little pat on the back there, but come to find out, right? Like 3 years or 4 years after we had started the company and the brand was going and everything, some pool room owner in a town somewhere in Germany created a pool room and called it In Stroke.
Oh yeah.
So up until then, to my knowledge, no one ever had used that, whether as a word combined or two words or anything, right? So I can only assume, that he was inspired by our use of the word In Stroke, and decided to call his thing that. But it led to confusion. So we actually ended up having to come to an agreement with this guy, rather than go through a lengthy lawsuit, which we probably would have won, but we might not have, because even though he had a pool room, he wasn't selling any pool products with the word In Stroke on it. So the court might have said, well, there's no likelihood of confusion here, right? They're going into a pool room. But we came to an agreement that he wouldn't use it for any pool products, and he could keep using it for his pool room, and it would be very local, and we would just continue to use it for our billiard products and our cases and stuff, and have that in those categories. So
well, that worked out.
The point that I'm making here is that, you really have to be diligent about that, because if we had not noticed that, and he had started like selling pool cues or pool cue cases or whatever, then we would have had a real expensive legal fight on our hands, possibly, if we couldn't scare him off. And that's one of the things that can actually sink a company sometimes. If you don't have the money to fight it, then they can really cut into your sales, and it sets up kind of an animosity situation where you're having to tell people, well, that's not the real In Stroke, we are.
Right.
And if you interestingly enough, if you do have the money to fight it and you take it to court and you go to court, you might win. You might actually end up with a situation where they have to stop, but you get no compensation.
Right.
And that happens quite often. So you might have spent a really big chunk of money just to get someone to stop.
Well, to register your trademark, you can just do it yourself online, right? You don't have to go through the whole lengthy, expensive process with a lawyer.
So you can register a trademark yourself. Last I checked, it was around $975. That might be different now.
Ooh, that's a lot.
But one of the advantages to going through a lawyer is if you go through an attorney that specializes in trademarks, they're generally better at searching for anything that is similar, anybody else that's used a trademark. So one thing that people need to consider.
I think those are called knockout searches, right? Where they go through and look everything up and try to make sure it's not going to infringe on someone else's current
Correct.
trademark.
So in the United States, there are over 400 categories. You remember in one of our earlier steps, we talked about, industry codes, right? So there are trademark categories as well. So there's over 400 categories for which a trademark can be applied.
And I think those will correlate with your industry when you look them up too. So.
Yes, possibly. But for example, I can sell sporting goods, right, under a trademark. I can register that and everything. and you could sell boots, under the exact same trademark, and they wouldn't overlap if they were in different categories.
Yeah.
So what happens is that you need to be able to trademark in as many categories as you can afford to that pertain to your business, so you can have the broadest amount of protection. But you should not trademark in industries or sections where you do not intend to use it, because that can also be stricken. Even if they grant you the trademark but you never use it, that can be stricken, and someone could come along and say, well, yeah, you've trademarked this in these 5 categories, but you've never made a single product.
Mm-hmm.
And then they can just take it away from you, and you don't get your $5,000 back that you spent, $1,000 per category.
Right. But again, you don't have to do that as when you're starting out right at the beginning.
And be aware of the things that you're putting out there, to make sure that, to the degree that you're able, you're reducing your liability.
Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by JB Cases. JB Cases is a pool cue case company specializing in custom cases. They have been in business since 2007, and their motto is true protection, true durability, true comfort, and true custom. Visit them at jbcases.com.
Well, I think to end this episode, we're talking about what does and doesn't affect you. And specifically, this episode will probably come out a little after the election cycle is over. But we're talking about whether the federal elections really make a difference in your small business. And I'm of the opinion that it doesn't really matter. If the government's run by Republicans or Democrats, you as a small business owner will still be able to make your money. You'll still be able to go to work every day. It shouldn't have too drastic of effect on your day-to-day activities. But what really does play a big role is the local elections. You should pay attention to the local elections. You should vote in your local elections. You should know who your council people are, who's on the zoning board, who are the elected judges, because those are the people that will affect things for you.
Yeah, I can totally agree with that. I think that a good example of this, might be all the talk about raising minimum wages.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of chatter out there about, will raising minimum wages, cause businesses to go under and collapse, and, society will go under. So obviously we've had no increase in the minimum wage, I don't know, for over 20 years or something like that, or more.
It's been a while. I got paid $7.25, which is this current federal minimum wage, when I was in college, and that was 17 years ago.
Yeah, so there you go. But there have been many communities that have raised the minimum wage in their communities.
Mm-hmm.
There are several states that have done it. There are several cities that have done it. And in the places where that has happened, right, then you've got stories on both sides. You've got people who say, oh, my business was affected. I was, went out of business, or I was near bankruptcy because I just suddenly had to pay everyone double. Then on the other hand, you've got people whose businesses actually got better.
Right.
Because, they were able to attract, more stable employees, if you will. They were able to, the employees were giving better service. The customers got better service. And in some cases, maybe the prices across the board raised up by 50 cents an item or something like that, rather than the doom and gloom predictions.
Typically not as big of a jump in price as you think it will be. And
Yeah.
depending on what you're selling and what you're doing, it shouldn't be that drastic. I mean, your $10 lunch is not going to all of a sudden jump to $30 just because they went up to $15 in minimum wage.
Right. So the point there was, knowing what initiatives are coming down the pipe, and what your local government wants to do, whether it's different zoning, right, in some part of your city.
Mm-hmm.
Knowing what they want to do with the wage and labor practices and things like that. These are the things that do affect you or can affect you immediately, sometimes. So I fully agree with you right there. And I will say that for the most part, what happens on the national scale doesn't really affect anyone in business on the local scale, at least not for a while, because generally when they do these laws, they're not implemented immediately. They've got a time frame. They're gonna, after 2027 or something like that is when they'll be rolled in or phased in,
Yeah,
a
and
little bit each year.
if you're planning ahead with that too, they give people time to catch up. So as long as you make a good plan for it, it's no problem.
Exactly. So the point of this segment for me is if you're in business and especially in small businesses we're talking about, you really have to just stop thinking so much about what's going on federally, what policies any particular candidate is for or anything like that. I'm not saying it's not important to think about. You need to be civically minded, of course.
Yeah, absolutely.
But as a small business owner, you shouldn't be crying wolf and acting like that you're going to get immediately put out of business if one side or the other gets into office at the federal level.
It happens every year. People come in around election time and they're complaining about, such and such is going to win and my business is doomed. And then the next year they're just fine. And the year after that, they're just fine. And it's the same crap 4 years later and they're still just doing fine. Everybody, you can keep your business going no matter who's in the presidential seat or whether the Republicans or Democrats are running the House. But I have had, worse interactions with the local government than I ever had with the federal. They kicked us out of our shop here. We couldn't have our kitchen in the back of our shop here. And that was all because of who was on the local city council. That's who kicked us out, not the federal government.
I'll tell you what, I had a similar thing happen to me.
Mm-hmm.
So we had bought a house in Vegas because we were spending 2 months a year in Vegas going to various shows.
Oh, right.
And so Lulu thought that it would be a good idea to buy a house out there because in the long run it would be cheaper for us.
Seems reasonable, especially if you can rent it out when you're not there.
Exactly. That was the whole point of it was we found a house that was a mile from the main convention center.
Mm-hmm.
And we usually brought, anywhere between 5 and 10 people to help us with the show. So it was always expensive and a logistics nightmare to try to get, 5 rooms and everything that goes along with that. So we buy the house, right? And we're thinking to ourselves, no problem. We'll just, Airbnb it we set it up for other businesses. We made it super business friendly,
mm-hmm.
right? So high speed internet, the whole deal,
yeah,
every room.
Work well for the conventions.
Everything, absolutely, right? We set it up so that the dining table looked like a conference table, and you could have good meetings there,
mm-hmm.
a little bar area. So one night I'm walking in after a show, right? We've had the house for about a year, and we've been renovating it, and I walk in, and just out of the blue on TV, there's a city council meeting going on the local public channel, right? I don't even know how it ended up on that channel, but there's in Vegas, they do a lot of these council meetings at night.
Yeah.
And sometimes like late at night, like 11, 12 at night, and they're live, right? These 2 guys are sitting there and they're asking for us what did they call it? A short-term rental license. Special use permit is what they want.
Yeah, I think a lot of municipalities has done this for
right.
Airbnb specifically, right?
Right. So what it is they passed a county ordinance in Vegas where you cannot rent for less than 30 days. That's called a short-term rental. You have to get a license now, like a liquor license, right? So if you have one of these rental types, right, you can have a short-term rental license, but you can only have one that is not within 600 yards of another one. So
it limits how many can be in a certain neighborhood.
Exactly. So these guys are on there, and these guys are literal Boy Scouts. I mean, one of them is a decorated military veteran, right? The other one is I think he was like a Boy Scout troop leader, and I mean, their credentials were impeccable as the lawyer was going down the line, and they both testified on their own behalf, and they were talking about how they had put money into this house, and one of the council members goes, gentlemen, you guys are like the perfect people, the most responsible, that we could ever hope for. But someone like one street over from you already has a short-term rental license, and so therefore you're within this boundary. We can't give it to you. And the guy goes, one of the guys goes, or the lawyer, he goes, but that person only got that short-term rental license so that he could prevent anyone else around him from getting it. They have no intention of using it.
Yeah.
And the city councilman says, well, maybe you should go offer to buy it from him. So he basically set up a liquor license thing.
Yeah.
But you got to understand, right? So these guys, and they were literally, as it turned out, they were literally a football field away from me, because there was a school behind my house, and they were across the football field on the other side behind their house. So I could look out my back window and see their house.
Yeah.
That's just how coincidental this was.
Yeah.
And I watched this. I just caught it like completely out of the blue, and I watched it and I was like, wait a minute, what's a short-term rental license? Because I thought, the Airbnb should be no problem.
Oh, you hadn't even started Airbnb in it yet.
No, I hadn't, and I had no idea.
And see, this is why you didn't do a feasibility study to make sure.
Yeah, I didn't do anything like that. It was impulsive. It was look on Zillow and go find a house and get a shitty rate.
Yeah.
And get yourself locked into this. So the next morning, right, I called around. I started calling around, asking attorneys and lawyers and everything. And basically what I was told to a man was, you have zero chance of getting a short-term rental license or a special use permit for a short-term rental license in your location. That's how hard the city council was about it. And that was a situation where what they did affected me, and I didn't do my due diligence to find out that this had already been on the books for, before I bought the house. So basically all the Airbnbs that were operating inside the county were operating illegally. They even hired a company to suss out who was renting by Airbnb and charging them $1,000 a day for the length of the rental as a fine, and taking people's property if they didn't pay. So luckily I found that out before I put it up as an Airbnb, and then we ended up selling the house. So COVID hit. So
city and county regulations, they will get you far faster than the federal regulations will. And we have that in our business. That dealing with the state is much worse than dealing with the IRS on back taxes and stuff. So anyway, pay attention to the local election. More important than the federal for your small business.
There you go, guys.
Very
Stop
nice.
arguing on the internet. Do what I did. Quit cold turkey.
Yeah, no more Facebook, right?
And focus on what's local to you and making your circle stronger.
Well, I think this one went pretty long. Any final thoughts, though?
Nope, no thoughts.
All right. Well, we'll see you next week, man.
All right, man. Have a good one.